My lungs were in fantastic condition when we first started measuring this. When I got COVID in November, I had some pretty discouraging lung damage, which was an eye-opener.
That was former tech CEO Bryan Johnson, who's kind of famous for trying to live forever, spending millions of dollars a year on it, and even swapping blood with his 17-year-old son and 7-year-old father.
Well, this is my son, Talmadge, my blood boy.
Hi, Talmadge.
Hello!
I have some extra blood after if you want.
Hit him up for blood.
I think Bryan Johnson's experience with COVID is interesting because it touches on a few different topics like the COVID experience of the ultra-wealthy, the whole discourse around health and wellness that often ignores COVID, and his experience getting damage to his lungs and heart from a mild COVID case.
When I got COVID in November, we were able to see in real time what was happening to my lungs and my heart. It was pretty bad. And it was alarming because I had a pretty mild case of COVID. I had a fever for 24 hours. I felt pretty bad for a couple of days, but it wasn't a terrible case. And even though I didn't feel that bad, the damage we saw in my lungs and heart were significant.
I was familiar with Bryan Johnson, but his experience with COVID came to light mostly from Nate Baer, who does a lot of amazing COVID coverage, posting of all the COVID research that has never made it to the mass media, the stuff about how a COVID infection, even a mild one, ages a person biologically might be the most stunning. This is one of many papers. This one found accelerated biological aging in COVID-19 patients. So someone tagged him in and said, Bryan, you care so much about longevity. What do you say about COVID and long COVID? And Bryan Johnson replied, a mild case of COVID in November 2022 caused a loss of 15% of my lung capacity that I've not yet gotten back. And I've seen some people say that COVID is not affecting the ultra-wealthy the way it is everyone else, and that is largely true. This is data from the U.S. Census Bureau from 2022 through their Household Pulse survey. It shows a really strong relationship between household income and the percent of people who had COVID that reported experiencing long COVID. And it's honestly horrific that people with lower household incomes, almost half, were experiencing long COVID symptoms. Unions should be talking about this. We should all be protecting each other, wearing masks at work or going shopping. But I digress. But even people making $200,000 and above, or people like Bryan Johnson who are multimillionaires or 100-millionaires, they are still getting COVID and they are still getting long COVID. And I also did a tiny bit of sleuthing on his YouTube channel just to see if he was wearing a mask or other people around him were. And here in this clip, he's clearly wearing a mask wrong. You can stick a whole finger through there. The goal of masks is to have a tight seal. So I find it interesting that someone whose number one goal in life is to never die is wearing a mask wrong, got COVID, and got lung and heart damage from COVID. And so I think my point in this whole video is just that the ultra-wealthy are not exempt from COVID and its impacts. They still are being affected, much less than most people. But I do sometimes hear people say, you know, they have access to other technology we don't, other treatments. Even they don't fully understand how to avoid it and don't really have treatments given how multi-systemic it is and all the different damage it can cause. And I also really quick want to talk about this idea of health and wellness and how there are people who say they are health and wellness experts or influencers and they don't take COVID seriously when COVID is one of the primary drivers of your health these days because of how contagious it is, because of how ubiquitous it is, because people are getting it multiple times a year. You cannot be a health and wellness influencer and not mask on public transit, on a plane, in your daily life. So as of today, I'm officially a health and wellness influencer.